Hi, this is part 2 of working with heavy Solidworks models and drawings, part 1 being recording number 17. And in this one, you might have noticed this is similar to the model that we had on the last video, and I just wanted to show where the benefits are of deriving parts out to make them more stable and less encumbered by performance issues when you've got a very heavy model, and what we did with this one. And then because it will take a long time, parts of the process do take a long time with a heavy model. In order to show you the process of how we do this, I'll do it on a simplified kitchen cabinet model to demonstrate the process. But so essentially what you want to take some notice of is we've got these, this assembly has been rebuilt with derived parts, and you'll notice or take a bit of note of the F in brackets here, which means fixed. Basically, that means it's fixed to its original position that it was. Well, it basically means it's fixed, but in this case, it's fixed to the original position of the origin, its relationship to the origin in the original part. Fixed means you could have just fixed it. You could have just brought it in, floated it, and then decided, well, that's where I want it, and I'll fix it. But these are fixed in relationship to the origin because of the way we derived those parts out and brought them into the assembly. And so what you can see is if I open up this part here, well, let's first of all, before we do that, let's have a look at, just remind you of the model that we did have previously. So this is the joinery. You can see obviously the appearances are not quite the same, haven't filtered through, but essentially all of the bodies that you just saw in the previous assembly were all derived out from this rather heavy, complex model by picking a bunch of bodies here and here and here, say all these front panels. I'll show you those in a minute, and then right-clicking and using the insert into new part to create a derived part. I'm not going to do it on this though, because it's a heavy model. If you ever have to do this on a very heavy model, when you go to the insert part, it might take a good number of minutes. Maybe 20-25 minutes, sometimes half an hour. So it's one of those things, you just need to get them out, and then you can manage them better. If it's really heavy and really difficult to work with, you might just have to be patient with that. So that's why we're going to show you the process on a less heavy model. But you can see we've got all these different ribs and components and tops and bottoms and whatever, and you can choose how you're going to group them, I suppose, and then insert them as a group into a part. So if we go back to that assembly, you can see how I chose to group them. So the first part I got here is all the front panels. So if I open up that part, you'll see pretty obvious. So there's all the front panels, and that's kind of a nice group of parts. And you'll notice that they come in as a stock part. So what that means is a stock part coming through. It means that all the geometry that creates those bodies has actually been, all that work to create the geometry for each of these bodies is actually in the previous model, and it's just bring it through as a stock part. So it's much more lightweight to work with, and I can make now further changes here, do cut extrudes and whatever, and add on to the bottom of the tree, and you'll find that it's not encumbered by all the processing issues. So you can kind of make those future changes. That previous model, I persevered with working with it to get it to a point where we felt we'd made all the changes, all the front big design changes were all made in that model. We do expect there to be some tweaks from architects as we move forward, so we can manage those quite quickly and easily in this one. And this, if you know this is going to be your workflow, what it means is then when you put it down into a drawing, you're not getting that really heavy model trying to rebuild itself all the time whilst you're trying to draw it. It doesn't mean it's going to take away all the issues, but it certainly makes it a lot better to work with. So let's just go back at looking at some of those other groupings. So we've got solid end caps. That's pretty obvious. You can see they're highlighting in blue the solid end caps there. We've got some rear middle frames, so those little middle frames that are inside. So let's just open that up so you can have a quick look how they kind of grouped all these bodies together for the rear middle frames. You might be thinking about when you come to doing manufacturing drawings, you grouping might be thinking, well, okay, I'll group it so because I know that we're going to do a manufacturing drawing of just these bits. So that's one way you can be thinking about it. Once again, you can see we've got all these stock parts on the left-hand side. Instead of having 2,000 bodies in a model, which are all dependent on each other to create its geometry, we've now got just 162 bodies, and they're all stock parts, so it hasn't got all that weight inside it. So it's much easier, much more effective to work with it as you progress. So let's close that one out, and then we've got other things like the steel frames and so on and so forth, all brought in. Speaker housings, front base. Okay, I think it's probably enough. So how do we actually go about creating these and then bringing them into a sub-assembly? Well, let's close all this out and just take a look at this is an assembly of a kitchen cabinet. I've only got 2 of the parts brought in here, but it's actually these parts here, these 2 parts. You can see we've got the F here again because it's fixed. It's fixed in relationship to the origin. The first part that I derived out was the back, and the next part I derived out were the 2 sides together. And if we take a look, that's the assembly. If we take a look that it was the part that it was derived out from, this is the part essentially. So you can see that's the back, and these are the 2 sides. So how do we get a derived part out from here? Well, the first thing you need to do is to select the body. So what my next part I think I'm going to group together is all the horizontal components. So we've actually got 2 rails here at the back. We've got one just underneath the other. So we're going to press down our shift key and select that. We've got a shelf inside, so we'll hold the shift key down and select that, and we'll select the bottom, and that's all our horizontal parts. And then whilst you're hovering over over one of the bodies, right click and pull up. What you get here is insert into new part. And one quick tip, I think if you potentially have some bodies hidden away, you might not get the insert into new part option come up. So if you don't do, let's try that actually. Let's hide a body away. There's a time where it might be if you try this one. And that's coming into here. That's working. Just hide a body away. No, it's already coming up. There's a couple of occasions where the insert into new part doesn't come up. And just fiddle around with if you've got something hidden or showing. I can't remember what it is. Oh, well, I'll do it in another video if I remember what it is. But it should come up, insert into new part. So let's go through this again. Highlight all our horizontal bodies. Go insert into new part. So right click, insert into new part, and you get this field come up here. If you've forgotten one, so obviously it highlights them up. If you've forgotten one here, you can add it. You can click in this area here, and then maybe if you thought you needed this one too, you can add it, or you can just click on that and delete any out. So these are all the ones we want for this group. I tend to click the cut list properties box and the propagate visual properties, and then go OK, and it'll create a new part for you, which is over here. And you can see those are all the horizontal bodies, and we need to give it a name. So what I'm going to do is, I've got this on my desktop, so on a temporary folder. So we've got the back in there. We're going to call this something similar, but instead of it back, which was the first part we brought in, we're going to call this horizontal parts. Okay, and then save. So we've saved it. There we go. Brilliant. So that's saved. We'll just save that out and close it. Right, what's the next bits we need to bring out? We've got the horizontal part. How about the door? Once again, click on that. Insert into new part. We only want the door in this one. So cut this properties, visual properties. Bosh, tick the OK. And then we are going to call this door. There we go. Happy days. There's a door. And then we'll save that and close it. Okay, and lastly, I think we just need the legs. So Shift, select. There's a number of bodies to these legs. So let's grab them all. Right click, insert into new part. So you can see we're missing that one there. So just click on there, this area here, and add it. Okay. Cut this properties, propagate visual properties. And insert it into a new part. So you see that little bit of delay it had thinking about it. When you've got a really heavy model, that's the point in time where you've got to be patient. It'll take a long time for it to export, but once it's exported, you will get this field eventually will come up. So be patient, and then you can add your name to it. So this, instead of being door, is going to be legs. Save. Okay. So that's it. That's the part there. Now we've got the assembly, so it's going to take a look at the assembly. And we need to bring in some more parts, okay? These parts that we've derived out. So we go insert components, and we have to browse for them. And here they are. So we could bring in the legs first if we wanted to. And you'll see here's the legs, right? Now if I was to click in this screen here, they would be floating. But what we want is for them to be fixed in the same orientation and relate as it was in the previous model. So if we just go over to the green tick, it automatically puts them in the right place, and just go OK. And there you go. So now we've got the legs here, and they're in a fixed position. I mean, if you wanted to refloat that part, you could right click, and it is somewhere here. I think you can unfix. Float. So unfix, there you go, you just go float. So I'm not going to do it because otherwise it will float around. And that would remove that F. So, and if you'd have clicked it into the screen, it would be just sitting there floating, and you'd have to make some relationships to fully define it. See at the bottom here, it's showing it's fully defined. If it was floating, I would say underdefined. Okay, let's bring in the last couple of components. So browse, and we've got the base, we've got the back, we haven't got the door yet. Let's bring the door in. So once again, you can see it's, if I wanted to float it, it sits there, but when I go over to the green tick, it puts it into its correct position, and then we just click OK. There you go, there's the door. And then we're going to insert component again, which will be the last one, which I can't remember what it was that we've got left to do. Back doors, legs. So I think we've got everything actually. Let's close this off for a minute. Now we haven't got the horizontal parts, have we? So okay, insert components, and let's go for the horizontal parts. There we go. Well, obviously I was a bit overzealous there, and you can see we've got the dash here, and you can see this is floating around. What I'm going to do is, let's just delete this one out. Let's bring it in again, insert components, browse, and horizontal parts. There we go, floating around. Click OK, and there you go, it's fixed, and that's all in the same position. So then, if you then to insert this into a drawing, it's basically the geometries in the very original model. If we open the sides here, we can open it up. What you'll see is I actually did a cut extrude into the side here just to do a bit of a demonstration. So if we unsuppress that cut extrude, you can see I did a hole through that. Okay, let's save that out. And you will notice that in the assembly now we've got the hole, and you'd expect that, right? But if we go back to the very original model, very original part model, which we derived these from, so effectively the parent, so all the other parts and this assembly are a child of this model. Okay, I also did a cut extrude here. Okay, so if we unsuppress that, so you'll notice that these sides here were not affected by the circular one that I did in the child, because this is the parent. But when I unsuppress this, so what we do at this level will filter down through into the child. So we should see that when we update the assembly down below here, you should see that both in that assembly and in the part, we've now got that hexagonal hole. So just to give you an idea of how that all works. Okay, so this is derived parts. It's kind of pretty useful in not just for working with heavy models, but there's other uses for it. So, but once you, I'd have a little try of it if I were just to understand the mechanics of what's happening, play about and cut a few things up and make some changes, because there will be some changes that you'll create in the parent that will then create failures. You can imagine that if you do something in the parent and then it removes a face that you've relied on in the child part to create something else. So for example, well, let's see if we can do it quickly. If I were to in this part here, if I was actually to delete this body, direct editing, delete body, yeah, okay, I've now deleted it. Well, that's going to upset things a little bit. So you will find that we go back to the assembly and let's do a rebuild. Let's open this part. There we go. So you can see I did a rebuild there. So that's the other thing that you need to do, is you need to have all the various members of the family open to make sure things update and filter through properly into the child relationships. And if you need to do an update and you need to give it a bit of a boost or prompt, you can use the Control Q forced rebuild command, and you can see, look, now we've got this. We lost the face that we drew the circle on, so we've lost the cut extrude. It's showing as a fail, and it's a fail in this part as well, and it will presumably not be in the assembly either. So we've lost a whole side, and there you go. You can see we've got a failure here. So I hope this helps you work through that workflow, and hopefully it helps you manage some of these heavier models and drawings. See you next time.